Welcome back to Capital Catch-Up. I'm Victor.
And I'm Lenny. We have a significant slate of legislation to get through today, covering everything from the housing market crisis to the nuts and bolts of how we count poverty in this country.
We do. And looking at the docket for the 119th Congress, specifically the week of February 5th, 2026, we're seeing a mix of bipartisan cleanup and some deeply ideological committee hearings. Let's start with the economy, specifically housing. Lenny, we've talked about the rent trap before, but there is movement on the House side.
That's right. We are looking at House Resolution 7138, titled the Stop Wall Street Landlords Act of 2026. This is a direct response to a trend we've seen accelerating since the 2008 financial crisis, where large institutional investors buy up single-family homes, effectively pricing out first-time buyers.
It's a massive issue for the middle class, and this bill pairs interestingly with an upcoming committee hearing in the Financial Services Committee titled Priced Out of the American Dream. That hearing is scheduled for February 10th. It seems Congress is finally trying to tackle both the inventory shortage and the financing side of the equation.
Speaking of inventory and resources, we also have House Resolution 7245, the Lumber Timber Act of 2026. Now, despite the playful name, this is serious business for the construction supply chain.
Absolutely. Timber prices have been volatile. This bill aims to streamline the permitting process for harvesting on federal lands. It's a classic deregulation play, likely arguing that faster access to lumber will lower construction costs. On the Senate side, we see a parallel push for industry modernization with Senate Bill 3632, the Renewable Chemicals Act of 2026, which encourages the production of chemicals from biomass rather than petroleum.
Moving from infrastructure to governance, there are two bills here that I think listeners need to pay close attention to regarding trust in our institutions. First, we have the Restore Trust in Congress Act, which is being floated as Senate Bill 3649 and House Resolution 5106.
This usually signals ethics reform, likely targeting stock trading by members or tightening lobbying restrictions. It's worth noting that bills with Restore Trust in the title have a long history of being introduced, but a harder time passing.
True, but perhaps more impactful for the upcoming midterms is House Resolution 7265, the Vote by Mail Tracking Act. This would standardize how ballots are tracked through the postal system. Given the controversies of 2020 and 2024, creating a federal standard for tracking could be a double-edged sword, increasing transparency but also federalizing a process usually left to states.
Procedurally, that brings us to a distinct type of legislation we saw this week, House Resolution 1035. Now, this isn't a law that changes the code. It's a sense of the House resolution. It explicitly condemns federal workforce reductions at FEMA.
This is a direct shot across the bow at the administration's proposed budget cuts. It's fascinating because it highlights a rift. You have the Correctional Facility Disaster Preparedness Act, that's Senate Bill 3664 and House Resolution 711, acknowledging that we need more disaster planning for vulnerable populations like prisoners, while simultaneously the House is fighting to keep FEMA staffed.
It's the classic tension between wanting smaller government but needing robust emergency response. Speaking of vulnerable populations, we also saw the Stronger Start for Working Families Act, Senate Bill 3596, and the Poverty Statistics Enhancement Act, Senate Bill 3756.
That poverty statistics bill is technical but crucial. How we define the poverty line determines who gets aid. If they modernize the formula to account for cost of living differences more accurately, millions could either gain or lose access to benefits overnight.
We also have to mention the Wyoming Education Trust Modernization Act, Senate Bill 2273, and House Resolution 4328. This is likely a land grant issue, ensuring that revenue from federal lands in Wyoming continues to funnel properly into their state education coffers.
Shifting gears to the committee schedule, Victor, the lineup for the week of February 10th is intense.
That's one word for it. We have a hearing in the Oversight Committee titled Sharia-Free America, Why Political Islam and Sharia Law Are Incompatible with the U.S. Constitution.
This is a very pointed, controversial hearing title. It suggests a strong shift toward cultural conservatism in the committee leadership. In the same vein, we have the hearing Foreign Influence in American Nonprofits, Unmasking Threats from Beijing and Beyond.
These hearings are setting the narrative for the 2026 midterms, but there is also significant foreign policy work happening regarding the executive branch. The Foreign Affairs Committee is holding part 2 of a hearing on advancing peace in DRC and Rwanda through President Trump's Washington Accords.
It implies the administration is heavily invested in a diplomatic deal in the Great Lakes region of Africa. On a domestic note, I want to highlight the hearing on the science of reading. This has been a huge movement in education reform, moving away from balanced literacy and back to phonics. It's rare to see Congress dive into pedagogy like this.
And before we get to nominations, there is a hearing on opportunities with VHA reorganization. Veterans Health Administration reform is a perennial issue, but reorganization often signals privatization or consolidation of services.
Let's look at the personnel. The Senate has been busy. We have a slate of nominations, most notably Daniel E. Burrows to be an Assistant Attorney General.
The DOJ appointments are critical right now. We also see several U.S. attorneys: Thomas Govan Jr. for the Middle District of Alabama, Zachary Keller for Western Louisiana, and Ryan Raybould for Northern Texas. These are the top federal prosecutors in those regions.
And for the bench, we have Brian Charles Leah for the Western District of Tennessee and Justin R. Olson for the Southern District of Indiana. These are lifetime appointments, Victor. The legislative impact lasts a few years. These judges will shape the interpretation of the law for decades.
Finally, we should look at the Congressional Daily Records. We have volumes 172, numbers 22 through 26, covering January 30th through February 5th.
These records capture the floor debates on everything we just discussed. But I want to end on a lighter note from the Senate floor. Senate Resolution 602.
Ah, yes, supporting the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic teams for the 2026 Winter Games.
In a week full of hearings on Sharia law and Wall Street landlords, it's nice to see unanimous support for our athletes in Milan Cortina.
So, what should listeners watch for in the coming days? Keep an eye on that FEMA resolution. If it passes with bipartisan support, it sends a strong message to the White House that disaster relief cuts are a non-starter.
And watch the priced out of the housing hearing on the 10th. The questions asked there will tell us if Congress is planning a bailout, a crackdown, or just more talk.
That's it for this week's Capitol Catch-Up. Thanks for listening.
See you next time.